every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest, trusted by fast scaling founders and event organizers to deliver clarity, structure, and system that move people and profit. None other than Miss Katie Peterman. Welcome, Miss Katie, on Abstract Essay. And can you please introduce more by yourself that I
Absolutely. Thank you, Daniel, so much for having me on. I appreciate it. I'm definitely excited to talk about fast scaling and founding. I've been in the live event industry for about 16 years. My team has served over 3,200 companies. So we have a lot of the data that's needed for people to make quick decisions, and that is what allows them to scale so fast.
well said, Miss Katie. And here on Abstract Essay, we celebrate you, we salute you. Thank for Thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to us. And today, let's talk about being you. You've been inside over 3,200 companies. What is the single most common reason founders stay stuck? Not lack of capital, market, or talent, but something they're doing to themselves daily.
Yeah, so that's a great question. Really, what it is people aren't looking at the data that they have in front of them. They're not seeing the patterns. They're not recognizing, what they're recreating. Sometimes inside of their current company, sometimes inside of multiple companies that they have. They're not really recognizing the patterns and the data and the stories that they have in front of them. And sometimes people aren't looking at data at all. And so I'm really passionate and I believe about data driven decisions and using data to make quicker decisions. And really that's the common thing that we see is most people are not looking at data. They're not making data driven decisions. And even if they have data, they're not using it properly.
Well said, Miss Katie. You say being a clear is being kind. What specific conversation you have or you had with a founder that was brutally clear and they initially hated you for it, but later thank you for?
Yes. We use a tool called Predictive Index, and Predictive Index goes off of drives and needs, and it can kind of tell you how someone functions with certain responsibilities inside of a role. I typically will use that before we partner with someone so we have a better understanding, and then we can talk about potential conflicts that could come up. So, one time we used this tool. And I let someone know that I wasn't interested in working with them because the profiles and kind of the patterns that they were showing on their decision making weren't going to be a good fit. Um, they continued to push and to sell and to say, hey, no, we can do it anyways. And this is what we're looking for. And this is why we want to work together. We did end up working together, and it allowed me to hold them accountable when they kind of started showing those patterns and those behaviorals that we had concerns about. And then later, they did thank me for holding them accountable to some of those behavioral patterns that they had.
Well said again, Miss Katie. You've seen fast scaling founders and event organizers. What is the pattern of self deception you've watched? Successful founders believe the right before things they fell apart, and how do you spot it before they do?
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard on that journey as a founder, as an owner. There's so much passion that goes into it when they have a vision, an idea, a product, or a concept. It's almost like they get tunnel vision. And because it's their vision and because it's so strong, they're not looking at reasons why it won't work. They don't want to be told why it might not work or what obstacles could be in the way. They've got blinders on, they've got tunnel vision, right? Um, and good and bad, because they say a little bit of delusion goes a long way in order to get something to market. It takes a true skill to have vision and to launch a new product or service or put something out there, which is what founders and visionaries do. Where I come in, and where I've been able to help people is, we kind of see what works and what doesn't. And we do poke holes in ideas because we want it to be successful, right? We want it to be protective. We want it to officially launch to market. And so will come in and provide, might maybe shed some light on some areas that they overlooked when they're just moving too fast, right? That's something that's very common. That's a very common pattern, is that when an owner and a founder is excited about a new product or vision or taking something to market, they move really fast and they burn through a lot of resources. Sometimes they're burning through people, right? They're just moving so fast all at one time. Um, and so for us, getting them to kind of like slow down, take precautions, and say, hey, this is what we've seen in similar situations, can help them look at it in a different perspective. And it's not always fun, because sometimes they don't want to be told no, they don't want to be told to slow down. But in reality, it keeps them safe, and which keeps, opportunities safe for the long run.
Well said again, Miss Katie. And you said the average misfire costs a company at least $15,000. What is a misfire you witnessed that cost far more, and what was the single decision that caused the dominoes to fall?
Yeah, great question. Mishires um, can cost a minimum of 15,000, because it's not just the person that you are recruiting in that hourly dollar amount. You also have to think about the tools, resources, equipment, things like that are put into that employee's onboarding. And then you have to think of the higher level people and their hourly, right? Or what that looks like, that all of these four high level people on your team are now a part of this person's training and onboarding for the next 30, 60, 90 days. So when you look at the true cost of bringing a new team member on, putting in all the training and resources, getting all the accounts, CRM services set up, when you look at that, sometimes it's three times the amount of what you actually brought them on for. That's just something a lot of people don't take into consideration. And when they have a revolving door, revolving positions, one thing that we look at very quickly is, why are they hiring for this position? Why do they have a high drop off? Why are they losing people? Most of the time, what we find and why the dominoes are falling is because they don't have onboarding set up correctly. They don't have a clear path to success for this person. This person signed up for a role that now 2 3 weeks later into that position is completely different than what they were told it was going to be. They're making changes while they're hiring and bringing people on board, and now this role, this position, most of the time has morphed into something completely different. And so really where that starts to fall is because we don't have all of our ducks in a row or any SOPs created to bring this person on board successfully. And as a result of that, you could have had an amazing A player that you brought into the company, but now you've had turnover, or they put in their notice, or they don't complete it, or 6 months down the road, they're unhappy, right? Because we didn't properly onboard that person and set them up for success.
And Miss Katie, you've been a chief of staff and worked closely with founders. What is the most difficult truth you've had to tell a founder about themselves, and how did you say without getting fired?
What
Hmm.
a great question. What is the most difficult thing I've had to say to a founder, and how did I say it without getting fired? I think one of the
Yes.
best things that you can do is asking for permission, right? And seeing where someone is. So I'd say, Daniel, are you open to having a conversation right now? Are you open to receiving feedback? Do you mind if we can talk about X, Y, and Z? And I'd like to share some things that I'm noticing with you and kind of dive into this. Are you open to that conversation? I think one of the best things that you can do is asking for it first. Not everybody wants feedback. It's not always the right time. It may not be, open to it for whatever reason. And so really asking for that helps set the tone, lets them know where you're at. And everyone has the opportunity to say no. And you can say, okay, let me know when it is a good time to discuss this. I think the delivery of it, when we're delivering feedback or criticism, or maybe changes that we need to make that are not on board with the original decision, it really helps when you provide data driven facts, right? Grounded assessments of where you're coming from, and not an emotional reaction, and not I think or necessarily I feel. It's, hey, what we're looking at, what it shows, what we do know, and providing that so that way you're able to have a logical conversation. And you're always going to have emotions tied into it, but at least we're not emotionally reactive, which is great. So I think the delivery, asking for permission are all going into it. I think one of the hardest conversations that we have with founders and owners is everyone has a little bit of financial trauma. The way that we view money, the value, the output, your vision, your dream, your baby, right? Everything that you've put into your company. And the way that everyone deals with finances and their perception of value tied to that is always so different. And I think when you get into it, for almost every person, finances is one of the most difficult conversations because you never know how someone is going to react to it. Everyone views it so differently, and it really triggers an emotional response for a lot of people.
Miss Katie, you've seen founders who say they want system but unconsciously resist them. What's the behavior that gives away founder into the things they want to scale but actually wants control?
That's a great question. A founder that thinks that they want to scale, but they want control, um, that's a really difficult spot to be in. And it's really tough because when you want to scale, you actually have to let go of control. You have to be ready to hire someone and let them do it and let them do it their way. You most likely are not an expert in everything. You can't be an expert of sales and marketing and finance and personnel, right? You're going to have to bring someone on board that is the expert in something that you're not the expert in, and you have to release control of that. For people that like to be in control, and really it's a sense of safety and security, if they're looking for safety and security, the best way to do that is to view that all through data. If you're like, look, I know nothing about marketing, but now I'm going to fork over this huge paycheck and bring on this guru who's supposed to be amazing, and they used to work at Facebook, and so they charge outrageous amounts of money, and that's kind of scary for founders. The best way to know, okay, did I make a good decision? Did I make a good hire? Was this a good investment? Is to have KPIs and metrics and data in place so you know where that's going. Control, even though it comes across negatively and hurts a lot of things in companies, what they're looking for is safety. So when you recognize that, and you recognize that a founder is just looking for safety in these decisions, you can figure out a way to kind of bridge that gap. And so they don't get in the way and they don't hurt relationships, and they're actually able to scale. But scaling is releasing control.
Releasing controls. Yes, you help founders make quick decisions. What is the decision making framework you use that makes less than 10 minutes but saves months of a spin?
Yeah. So when we're organizing the departments and the data, we'll build out what we call is a stoplight report. And a stoplight report has all of their KPIs for each department, right? You've got marketing, sales, finance, personnel, leadership, and operations. And we've got 3 to 7 KPIs in each of those. And we make it super simple. So someone is either on track or they're off track. It's either red or it's green. And imagine if you stepped into your company and you only had 10 minutes a week to make quick decisions to decide who are you going to meet with, what do you need to focus on, and what needs to be solved and what needs your time right now. On your phone you could easily access that dashboard of your stoplight report, and what's in the green, fantastic, let it keep going. What's in the red, you can immediately see that, and that's where you know to spend your time and where you need to be involved in order to make quick decisions. And with that data, if you're consistently tracking, you can also immediately prioritize those things. If you have a jump, let's say, your team went from a collection rate of 50% and now we're down at 10%, that's probably going to be one of your number one priorities, right? We're in the red, we dropped a huge percentage. That's where you need to figure out what's going on how did we get so far off track. Something that's in the green or doing well, right? You don't need to spend your time there. You can send a quick text and say, hey, you guys are crushing it, keep going, thanks so much.
Well, that interesting, Miss Katie. You said you can't afford a player or a player, but then you can create the team of a fractional executive to solve that. What is the math that makes fractional work better than a full-time hire for most fast scaling companies?
Yeah, absolutely. I really believe that everyone should have a high level operator. Operations is really what holds the dream and the vision together. A lot of people can't afford, or they're telling themselves they can't. And sometimes it just doesn't make sense to hire a COO that's 200, 300, 600,000, depending on what industry you're in. That's a really large investment that not most small business owners and founders are able to hire right off the bat. And so we were really passionate about that. We have a team of fractional executives, and we make it affordable so someone is able to have an A player, right, without that really large commitment. And most of the time when we're inside of companies, they don't need someone 40 hours a week, right? And a true
Mhm.
operator, if you're really good at creating systems, you put systems in place and then you replace yourself. And so we're not there for the long run, we're there for the right run. We want to put systems in place and we want to help people get to where they need to go. And then we want to wish them on their way and create them for success.
Well, Miss Katie, you say if only you had 15 minutes a week per company, what is the single highest leverage question you'd ask each company in those 15 minutes? And what would you do with the answer?
Okay, great question. So, if I only had 15 minutes with a company, which is pretty standard, we have alignment meetings, right? Is I would say what's on fire and what's going well, right? And why do I ask what's on fire? Because I need to know what we need to dive into. If you ask your employees and your teams, your department leads, hey, what's on fire, what's going well, right? If they say nothing is on fire, like dig deep into that, right? Figure out what's going on. But most of the times the things that they believe are urgent are not truly urgent, and we build out what's called a rapid fire list. And so we'll have everyone dump their issues list and build that out on what they think is on fire. We then rank those things together and we prioritize them. And then we spend the rest of that time solving the things that everyone agreed was on fire. And so now we've collectively prioritized what we believe are our biggest issues going on. We do that on a weekly basis. A lot of companies do that quarterly. And what you're doing is you're allowing your team, you're allowing departments and divisions to go build, do, run, put man hours, work hours into something. And everyone can be going in a different direction. And none of us are aware of it because we didn't check in and ask, hey, what's on fire? What's going well?
Miss Katie, you live in Dallas, but your social post makes everyone question where actually are. How does travel inform your operational thinking, and what's a business lesson you learned from street dog or, well, a coffee shop in another country?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think we are a product of our environment. I think environment is extremely important. I know that, you know, for a minute we went hardcore and everybody was back in office, and now it's hybrid positions, and sometimes people are remote. We function fully remote. We do on site occasionally, but myself and the entire team is fully remote. What's great is you're able to do that when you have data, because you can see, like, okay, is this person doing their job or are they not? Are they hitting their metrics or are they not? And we operate that way. I'm not super strict with my team, and so we all kind of live that lifestyle that if it works and you're traveling or you're in Colorado or you're in Greece or wherever it is, as long as you are hitting your deliverables, be in your environment, be in your best environment. My best environment just happens to be with really good coffee and really good food. I love street food. um, that's one of my favorite things in other countries, and there's just something about co-working in a coffee shop with other, entrepreneurs and people, and there's some inspiration that goes into every cup of coffee, that I think just takes you to a really great place.
Well said, Miss Katie. And to wrap up our discussion for today, you had to fire a client. What was the final straw? How did you fire them in a way that was a clear its kind rather than burning a bridge?
Great question. Yeah, anytime that you are parting ways with people, right? You're doing them a service as well as yourself. There's many times that owners and founders, they keep people on because they're actually too nice. Their hearts are too big, right? They're making sure everyone else is taken care of. They're the ones putting out payroll, and it's really hard to part ways. But I truly believe that in alignment, right, things are done in ease. And when it's a good fit, things will naturally flow and kind of work themselves out. And so when things are not working and you just can't seem to get on the same page, being clear is being kind, right? And you're doing them a service and you're doing it for yourself too. Everybody wants to win. I never believe that someone is just out there like, I'm going to take this company down. I really believe everyone wants to win and they want to be in a position that wins. And so the best thing that you can do for that employee or partner or whoever it is that you need to let go, when you let them go, they can actually go be in a position that they start to win every day too. And that's what everyone deserves. And that's a position that everyone should be in, is a position that everyone has an opportunity to have daily success and to create wins. And so parting ways is the best way to do that if it's not working.
Certainly. And Ms. Katie, can you please invite our listeners to support your business, your projects, or anything you want to promote on Advocacy?
Yeah, thank you so much, Daniel. We are open for, if you feel like you are stuck somewhere, if you're feeling like, hey, we have high turnover, we need a sales audit, I don't know if our marketing is working. After serving 3,200 companies, we have data. We know what works. We're able to assess the 5 phases. We look at the 5 pillars, and we're able to just make small changes that are a huge pressure release for a lot of people. So I welcome and encourage everyone to just book a call, see if there's something that we can help someone with. We leave everyone better than we found them. Boy Scouts rules, right? Take care of everybody. And so, yeah, you can check us out at Your Fractional Executives, yourfrx.com, and we're happy to help everyone.
Indeed. And Miss Katie, before I will let you go, I have one more question. A founder is listening right now or watching. They are overwhelmed, stuck in the details, and secretly afraid that if they stop being the hero, the whole thing collapses. They are
Yeah.
heard get system 1,000 times, but don't know where to start or when to start. What do you say through them in 60 seconds, and what's the single smallest, most concrete action they can take tomorrow morning that takes less than 15 minutes?
Ooh, that takes less than 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't believe in shortcuts, Daniel. I think most things, can't be done in 15 minutes. However, if they have just 2 hours, and you could cut it down because you could play it back on a higher speed, but there is a book, and it's called Traction, and it's by Gino Wickman. He's the godfather of systems. He created them all. Give credit where credit is due. Everything goes back to Gino. Understanding your role and understanding who you are and how you function and why you're having some of the issues that you are. I think a lot of founders and owners are out there and they feel like it's just me. No one else feels this way. No one else has these issues. I'm the only one struggling. Why am I struggling? Why is this happening? And it's not, and it's super common. And so that is a great book to understand why they're having some of those issues. I think that it's a game changer for every single person that I have met and been introduced to, and they absolutely loves it. So not 15 minutes, it is a commitment, but I would definitely say go download that book on Audible, just listen to it and get a better understanding.
Not 15 minutes. Definitely. Miss Katie, I'm inviting you to please do be my guest on Book 101 review. And let's talk about, well, something good over there. Just recommend a book or books that influence your journey. So, Miss Katie, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. More to come, people. See you soon.